Today's episode is going to be the fun part of learning about our menstrual cycle. Over the past few weeks, we've been covering the anatomy and physiology of our menstrual cycle, what to expect when it comes to hormonal regulation, emotional regulation, workouts, all the fun stuff, focusing on our female physiology. And today we're going to learn how to actually apply some of those concepts to our life and especially our schedule in regards to workouts, sleep, doing hard things, friendships, relationships, like so many components of our life can be optimized by just knowing about our menstrual cycle. So that's what we're going to cover today. I'm your host, Dr. Kelsey Vick, a board certified orthopedic doctor of physical therapy, and then also a pelvic floor physical therapist and the owner of the Ella Wellness Sisterhood. Again, we've been covering this topic for the last few weeks. So if you've missed some of the episodes, episode 19 is Menstrual Cycle 101, where we cover the anatomy and physiology, the hormonal component, all of it around our menstrual cycles. Episode 20 was about cycle syncing, primarily in regards to like our musculoskeletal health and workouts. And then episode 21 was about emotional regulation and how our hormones and the different phases of our cycle affect our overall, like how we feel about ourselves, how we approach others, how we see the world. So if you've missed some of those episodes, we'll cover a brief overview again today, but I highly encourage you guys to go listen to those because there's some good, like solid, just foundational information, and then something that you can refer back to take what, like the case study that I'm going to give you today for my own schedule and apply it to your own life. And so a few updates before we dive in, but the Ella Wellness Sisterhood is doing a summer shorty workout series that has been throughout like mid-July into August. It is 4 weeks worth of our beloved shorty workouts, 10 to 20 minutes long. And it's just super targeted, super efficient workouts that are built for holidays and then also when you're short on time. It's completely free. So again, you guys are probably sick of hearing this, but I will leave the link in the bio if you want to join us. It has been so much fun and it's only going to last till the end of August. So I hope you guys can join us. And if you have been following along with some of the workouts, I hope you've been enjoying them. I'd love to hear your feedback because I know a lot of you guys have signed up and I'm just super grateful because I hope that these workouts are just helping you feel the best in your body. And I hope that some of the concepts that I'm teaching in these workouts also help you just carry over like what you're feeling during my workouts to other workouts that you do too. So again, sign up in the link in the show notes. I would love if you could join us. And again, it's only for a limited time, but it's completely free, 4 weeks worth of workouts. So even if you just need some workouts to like get you kick started or you're just bored with your current workout routine, try these out. We'd love to have you. So we'll get into it again. We'll dive into a little bit of a brief overview of what we've been chatting about over the last few weeks, but then we'll get into basically how I structure my month when it comes to workouts, like relationships, especially business goals and different things that I have for that. So we take a look at just my whole month and what I sort of prioritize during each phase. And by structuring my month this way, it's really helped me to sort of work with my body rather than against it. And so this is a little bit of a disclaimer, but all of these are things that I do. I want to use it as sort of a case study for you because I do think, again, I hope if you've gotten one thing out of this series, I hope it's that I truly think that you should learn your own body and track your own cycle so that you can tell what phase that you're in, so that you can tell how you're going to be feeling, what physical symptoms are showing to indicate what phase you're in physiologically. How are your emotions? How's your motivation level? How's your overall sort of like moodiness that we get during that PMSing time of the month? So please, 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 I would love if you guys started tracking, but use this as sort of a case study to figure out how to schedule your month so that it works best for your body, not that you're just copying mine, if that makes sense. I think mine sort of reflects what's happening in regards to our own physiology, but it is not something that I want you guys to copy like day for day because my body is not your body and I want you guys to be and feel empowered to be able to track your own cycle, learn more about your body so that you can actually feel the best in your body and also in how you structure your life. So again, a little bit of a brief overview. So the first phase is our follicular phase, and that is about days 1 through 14-ish. Day 14-ish, we kind of estimate as the day of ovulation, and then days like 14 through 28, the back half of our cycle, 15 through 28, is that luteal phase. And again, these are rough estimations. based on a 28-day cycle. 21 to 35 is sort of the normal, so we can sort of like estimate what phase we're in based on the days, but I really do think listening to your body is the best way to be able to figure out what phase you're actually in. So for the follicular phase, that's the first half. Estrogen is the dominant hormone. We have better recovery, better mood, more motivation, and we are more likely to approach positive stimuli. So I look at that as more motivation. If you guys listened to the last episode, we talked about approach avoidance. In this follicular phase, we are more likely to approach positive stimuli, and then we have a quicker response time between that positive stimuli and our response. In the luteal phase, that's the second half, progesterone is dominant. So we have a more difficult recovery, we have mood changes, we usually have overall like less motivation, but we do have a quicker avoidance of harm. So in that approach avoidance, this is more talking about the avoidance aspect, but we avoid harm quicker than we do in our follicular phase, which is a good thing. And then we also have poor evaluation of basically the emotional cues in a situation or a person. So we are more likely, if we sense a neutral phase or a neutral circumstance, we're more likely to sense that circumstance in more of a negative light compared to if the person or the situation was actually just kind of neutral or more positive. So we just overall, our brains and our minds are shifted more towards, again, it's not negative, but more less desirable like emotions. We always want to feel happier. We always want to feel more positive. But in that luteal phase, we are just shifted a little bit more towards less desirable sort of emotions or experiences. So again, a disclaimer, we'll kind of go through each category of how I structure my month based on my menstrual cycle. And then my hope is that you can sort of extrapolate all of these different things and apply it to your own schedule. So we'll go through first workouts. And again, I did an episode on sort of my overall like wellness routine. I can't remember the episode, but it's a little bit back. And so this will sound familiar to some of you guys if you've listened to that episode, but I kind of break up my workouts into overall one upper body strength, one lower body strength, one upper body Pilates, one lower body Pilates, core sprinkled throughout, walks 5 times a week, and then a hill sprint workout and a long run workout. And so that's sort of like the bulk. And again, that's like very broad umbrella term. And that's how we structure the Ella Wellness Sisterhood workouts as well. But knowing that that's my overall workout structure, now we'll dive into how I sort of tease out all of the nuances of all of that in regards to what's happening hormonally. So in my follicular phase, again, estrogen's dominant. You're just feeling a lot better in your body, better recovery. This is just like where I love thriving. So I generally do heavier weights. I push my reps a little bit more. For all of my strength training, I definitely still push to fatigue, no matter the weights that I'm using. But in my follicular phase, I'm more likely to use heavier weights or use a harder rep scheme. And then I usually do longer workouts a little bit, but that's just because I feel better. So typically my workouts are like 30 to an hour. And in my follicular phase, because I'm feeling better, because I'm able to do more, because I still want to push that fatigue level, and fatigue is a little bit further away than it is in my luteal phase, during my follicular phase, I tend to have longer workouts. And then I usually just have a better and quicker recovery, meaning after the heavier weights, I just feel a lot better even the day after or 2 days after. In the luteal phase, I might be choosing lighter weights or like a higher rep scheme. So I'm still reaching that point of fatigue, but knowing that my body is not primed for the recovery that it has in the follicular phase. The luteal phase, I adjust a little bit. So I either do lighter weights or the same weights, but maybe less repetitions. If I'm doing lighter weights, I'll push the repetitions a little more to make sure that I'm still reaching that muscular fatigue. But it's just a different sort of scheme that I might use. And then it usually takes me a little bit longer to recover. And so a lot of the time I'll start to incorporate more walks or more of the like rest throughout the workout rather than having a shorter rest like I do in the follicular phase, just because I'm feeling better during the workout. So for Pilates throughout, again, I do an upper body Pilates day and lower body Pilates day. I really don't change this too much. It stays relatively the same. For hill sprints in the follicular phase, again, this is where I'm feeling the best. It's just better overall. It's more intense. I feel more confident after. It's one of those workouts where I leave saying, wow, that was a good workout. I'm so glad I did it. My body feels great. And so overall, I just push myself a little more. I might do 1 or 2 more reps than I normally do. And it's just a way for me to push that cardiovascular health in that follicular phase when my body's primed to be sort of building and pushing, because the recovery is also that much better. In my luteal phase, I might decrease the amount of hill sprints or the speed of those hill sprints. So this is where the mental game sort of comes in, where I'm like, okay, you have a hill sprint planned every week. In the luteal phase, it's a little bit harder for me to get motivated to do that workout. And again, these hill sprints is just my form of like high intensity interval training. Whatever that means for you, you can sort of adjust this based on your workout schedule as well. But hill sprints for me is that like cardiovascularly, I'm trying to reach my like close to my max heart rate for a relatively like shorter period of time. I feel like these workouts take me probably somewhere between like 10 to 20 minutes, honestly not 10, 15 to 20 minutes, depending on what phase I'm in, how many hill sprints I'm doing, how fast I'm going, all of those sorts of things. But I'm definitely pushing that like cardiovascular effort. But I might decrease the amount of hill sprints or the speed. These are usually the workouts where I'm like, okay, I've got to do it. And I know that I'm going to feel worse after. So that's even harder because my body doesn't necessarily feel as good after these hill sprints as they do in the follicular phase. But then I'm always like proud of myself for getting them done because I'm like, okay, I know that I just put more deposits into my longevity fund in regards to my cardiovascular training and endurance and like just max pumping capabilities. For my long run, I really don't change it. I just might adjust like timing and effort. My minimum is usually about 30 minutes. And so sometimes in my follicular phase, I might do a little bit more time. But in my luteal phase, I might just stick to that 30 minutes because that's like the goal that I have set for myself. But again, other than that, not really too much of a change there. And then for mobility, flexibility, I try 1 time a week, regardless of phase, but I'm usually more likely to do it in the luteal phase when I'm not feeling as good or just like I can lift the heavy weights that I do in the follicular phase. So I'm just more likely to do it in the luteal phase, even though my goal is to do it once a week. So that's sort of how I structure things. So strength training, Pilates, hill sprints, but again, that can be your high intensity interval training, and then a long run for more that like low intensity steady state, like longer cardiovascular endurance training. But you can sort of apply those techniques to your own workouts where if you are doing some strength training or some Pilates or whatever, maybe you push the weights a little bit more, push the reps a little bit more, knowing that your body's built for recovery in that earlier like follicular phase, days 1 through 14, compared to that back half where you might give yourself a little bit more grace, a little bit longer time to recover in between sets, those sorts of things. So I hope that just gives a little bit of an indication and example as to how to set up your own workouts utilizing my workout structure. Okay, this next one is something that I feel like has been super duper helpful for me when scheduling my month around my menstrual cycle, but I kind of titled this category as like business and other hard things because I don't know, in school, in business, and in life, honestly, we have certain things that are just hard. Like there's a hard hill to overcome in order to do those. And whether or not it's because you know rejection is possible on the other side, or that you're going to have this sort of uncomfortability on the back half of a conversation that you're supposed to have, whatever that is. Like there's just these barriers that we have to overcome. And I think of it more in regards to business, where if there's certain people that I have to reach out to, like you get a lot of no's, right? You get a lot of just like, hey, we don't align, or no, not right now, or honestly, even ghosting. And so in my follicular phase, which again is that first half, it's the phase where I'm more likely to approach positive stimuli, where I feel more motivated, where overall my emotional sort of like scale is tilted more towards feelings that are more desirable, so more positive for me. This is when I take more risks. I'm okay with getting more no's. Like this is when I schedule sort of all the hard things that I am a little bit more scared of the outcome, if that makes sense. So that can be emailing certain people, reaching out to certain people. It can be having a tough conversation with someone that you're dreading. It can be in school, like asking for a letter of recommendation from a professor or something that might give you a no, right? I look at it as in regards to rejection because usually that's a hard barrier to overcome. And I'm more likely to do those sorts of activities in this phase when it comes to business and even patient conversations that are pretty tough too. Again, I don't usually try and wait for those, but if I can do them in the follicular phase, if it's not time dependent, I will try and do it in my follicular phase when I know that I will better be able to respond to whatever comes out of that conversation that I have with the patient. And so this is one of the prime things that I've changed when it comes to managing my business is I just do a lot of things that I consider a lot harder in my follicular phase because I'm more motivated to do them. And then if the outcome is rejection or is a no or something that's less desirable, I know that I'll bounce back that much quicker. And again, at least I was more motivated to do them. So it's just easier overall for those no's to not affect me as much. It's easier for me to, again, approach those positive stimuli, approach those circumstances quicker rather than thinking about them over a long period of time and then wanting to approach them. So for me, again, it looks a lot like outreach or reaching out to certain people right now in the business, but in school or in life, especially rec letters, I know that was something that was super just anxiety producing when I was applying to PT school. So that can be something that you do during this phase, or to have conversations with significant others, or again, patients if you're like me. But that I usually try and do in my follicular phase. And then in my luteal phase, I'm less motivated. I just have more feelings of doubt, failure, negativity. I'm less willing to take different risks, or if I think about taking a risk, I'm more likely to try and talk myself out of it in this phase. And then I have this overall awareness that no's might affect my mental health a little bit more because, again, that scale is shifted more towards less desirable emotions like failure, like negativity, like doubt. So in this phase, I think the thing that has helped me the most is just being more mindful that that is the way that my brain and my physiology is shifted towards, and that I just have to ride the wave. Again, I say this all the time, but in the luteal phase, especially when it comes to my mental health, my emotional health, I've learned to just ride the wave because I know that these feelings of doubt that come up more frequently in this luteal phase, of failure, of negativity, it's going to get better when I'm in my follicular phase because that's just how I've sensed that my mental health and my emotions follow the different hormones that are happening within my body. And so I might not, again, I don't ever delay hard conversations or anything like that, especially with patients, but I just have this overall awareness that these might affect me more, and sort of stepping back and taking a bird's eye view of the situation and knowing okay, if Kelsey's going to talk to this person, Kelsey might have a poor response after this conversation. And so just having this general awareness of that can help me manage it a little bit better. And so for business wise, I try and do things that are a little easier for me to do. So for my business, it looks like, again, I always film podcasts, but I love doing that. I love researching, writing these blog posts. So sometimes that happens more so in the luteal phase because I know that is on me, right? It's not for someone it's not something that's negative or at all. I really enjoy doing it. So I do things that I try and prioritize things that are a little more in my control and things that I enjoy doing in my luteal phase because I know that the risk taking happens in my follicular phase, more motivation, different challenges that I might present myself with happen in the follicular phase compared to in the luteal phase. I sort of do what I enjoy, what is in my control, and what is overall just sort of fills me up a little bit more rather than pushing that comfort zone a little bit that I'm more likely to do in the follicular phase. So that's I know that's super vague because I feel like business and other hard things they're so varied person to person, but my hope is that hearing how I do it can, again, help you guys apply it to your own lives, and also knowing more about your own mental and emotional health through tracking, where as soon as you pass into that back half, if you start to notice yourself doubting more or having more fear of failure or negativity or whatever that might be, if you're applying to school, I know I have a lot of people applying to grad schools and different things like that, it's easier to get more down on yourself in that phase. And so just riding the wave through that, knowing that the pot of gold on the other side of the rainbow is coming in the follicular phase, and you'll have that much more motivation to do those hard things when your brain is sort of shifted and your physiology is sort of shifted towards more desirable feelings and emotions surrounding different risks or just hard things that you have to do. So for the next category, I have like relationships in general. So how I set up my schedule based on relationships. And I don't necessarily like plan this, but this is how it goes for me in my follicular phase. Again, that first half, you're feeling great. I'm way more social. I'm way more likely to sort of fill up my schedule, knowing that I'm overall a better time manager in this phase, because I'm like, okay, I'm really enjoying what I'm doing in my business. I'm really motivated to do things in my business. I'm really motivated to hang out with friends. I'm okay with seeing multiple friends, multiple family throughout the week. Where in the back half, I sort of go more inwards. I'm a little bit more reflective. I'm maybe not as likely to want to spend time with so many other people throughout the week. I'm more likely to want to spend some alone time or time with my husband. So it sort of varies. And again, I don't necessarily like say, okay, oops, it's the luteal phase, I'm not going to hang out with any friends. No, it's just how I sort of have found that my relationships go throughout my cycle, is that first half, I'm like, yeah, let's go. Let's hang out with all the friends. Let's play all the sports with all of our friends. I'm just feeling overall better in my body, and then also more social compared to my luteal phase, where again, I go a little bit more inward and I just want to like hang out with my husband and my family. So speaking of my husband too, he definitely knows, and again, talking about relationships, but he definitely knows which phase I'm in based on my mood, and he can definitely tell. So I do feel like if you have friends, sisters, partners, like support people around you, because in that luteal phase, it definitely helps to have someone there who's not like berating you for feeling negative or feeling a little extra sassy or short. It definitely helps to have someone who gives you a little bit of grace, so that you can also give yourself a little bit of grace in regards to just what's happening in your brain and with your emotions and with your hormones during that back half of the cycle. And the other thing I had for this category is like therapy. So I do that between like 1 to 2 times a month now. It used to be a little bit more frequent, but I know that I would tell my therapist, she'd be like, okay, how's the week going? And I was super aware when I was in my luteal phase and just overall more emotional, because I would be crying a little bit more. I'd overall have a little bit more of a reflective week of how just difficult or challenging things had been, or overall I was just more emotional during the luteal phase. When it comes to even like in the appointment, I would get a lot more emotional compared to a week or 2 weeks later when I was in my follicular phase, and I'd be like, oh my gosh, things are good, things are going well. So again, just having that awareness of what's happening in my own brain throughout the cycle has really helped me when it comes to all relationships, but especially my relationship with myself and giving myself grace for how I'm sensing the world around me, different circumstances, different people, all of those things. So the other two, there's 2 left and they're super short, but my faith life. So I do have weekly check-ins, and it's like through time with God. So it's an hour a week of adoration that I go journal and I just check in. And so usually I'll like flip through my journals and I'll notice different entries that I've written more in my follicular phase versus my luteal phase. Again, there's just this general tone that changes. And then I've also noticed that and again, we talked about this last episode, but our heart rate variability increases in that luteal phase, so in the back half of that phase. And that is the measure of how our nervous system is functioning, basically. So how quickly we're able to transition from that sympathetic part of our nervous system, that fight or flight, to that parasympathetic. The higher the number, the better, because it means we're better able to like transition between the two quicker. But since I notice, and again, I noticed this on my R ring, but since I notice heart rate variability increases in the luteal phase, I'm also more likely to do more like breath work, mindfulness, meditation. I should be doing this all the time, but I'm more likely to do it in this luteal phase, knowing that overall it's harder for me to access that parasympathetic part of my nervous system in this phase compared to in that follicular phase, when I just have a lot better sort of navigation of the two. And then the last thing, speaking of the R ring, but sleep. So in my follicular phase, again, so much better. I'm in my follicular phase right now. Like my R ring scores are off the charts. Like my resting heart rate's so low. Like it is just, my body is just primed and ready for the day. And I'm just feeling more awake and overall just like healthier in my body. But sleep especially, it's just so much better in my follicular phase. I also recover quicker with less sleep too, and with alcohol, because alcohol definitely affects my resting heart rate. But if I have alcohol in my follicular phase, my body bounces back a lot quicker compared to in my luteal phase. So in my luteal phase, I have poorer sleep. I don't reach my lowest heart rate, like my lowest resting heart rate at night. I have poor heart rate variability, which we chatted about. It's a longer time for me to wind down. So the R ring also does sleep latency. So the amount of time it takes from when you lay down to when you fall asleep. And it's a lot longer there in my luteal phase. I'm more restless at night, so it also shows me sort of like blocks in my sleep. And in my luteal phase, I wake up a lot more. And then I also, because of all of this, because of the poorer sleep in my luteal phase, I try to give myself a longer time to wind down at night. When I am in my luteal phase, knowing that my sleep latency is longer, it's just going to take me a lot longer to sort of calm down, get into that like rest, digest, parasympathetic sleep mode. So I hope this helped. Again, this is sort of, it feels like I'm like shouting information at you a little bit, but I'm hoping that you can use this case study of how I build my schedule to set up your own schedule and apply it to your own cycle and your own life. So make whatever categories you want, but these are the categories that have been affected the most by learning about my cycle. And I'd say especially like workouts, business/hard things category, and then also just overall like awareness and mindfulness of my own mental and emotional health. So I hope this sort of application episode helped you. I really do want to sort of create this way of operating. I use like a calendar. I live and die by my Apple Calendar, but I want to make a calendar to where like how to structure our months based on what phase of our cycle we're in, because I think it's super helpful to be able to write down workouts that I'm going to do in the first half of my cycle compared to the back half of my cycle, or what my goals will be for my workouts, or what my business goals will be in the first half compared to in the back half. And that way it's taken into account how I will possibly be feeling physically and emotionally in regards to my goals, because I know that in general, I feel like most of us have weekly goals. Okay, work out 3 times a week, work out 5 times a week, whatever it is, sleep 8 hours, hydration, work or school or business goals. This is what I'm going to try and do. But if we can sort of alter it and decide like what are we more likely to do when we are feeling our best physically and emotionally in that front half compared to in the back half, I feel like it's been such a nice way to structure my month rather than feeling like I'm a failure for not reaching certain business goals or workout goals that I have in the back half of my cycle that are way easier for me to reach in the front half. So I'm trying to sort of figure out a way. If you guys have any ideas, I'd love to hear it. Or if you're like, hey, I'd love to sort of help out or provide like sort of testing feedback, please let me know, because this has been one of those things that I feel like, again, learning about my menstrual cycle, learning how to track it for my body, and then applying it to my own life, especially in regards to my physical health, my emotional health, relationship health, faith life, and business goals, like other hard things that I have for myself, has been super beneficial for just like my schedule, how I feel overall, and how I'm able to better manage and better navigate these like sort of ups and downs that we have because we are built on this sort of cycle that we have. So again, that's like in the works. I'm trying to figure out like the best way to do that. But I hope you guys enjoyed this episode. Thank you so much for following along. If you like this episode, please subscribe, follow. If you want to see a visual, we are on YouTube, and you can see me talking with my hands and all of it. I'm sure it looks absolutely silly, but it's how I get information across. And I'm definitely more of like a kinesthetic learner, actually, is my number one. And then visual and verbal is actually my last, but I still absolutely love listening to podcasts. So I hope you guys got a lot out of this. Again, I would love a like, comment, review, whatever, follow on whatever podcast app you're using. And then if you want to join us for our summer shorty workout series, again, I'll leave that link below. But thank you guys so much for following along, and I'll see you guys again on the next Wellness Big Sis podcast episode.